Welcome to this explainer. Look, if you've been anywhere near a manufacturing floor over the last 5 years, you already know the deal. Collaborative robots, or cobots, have completely shifted from being just this interesting idea to absolute table stakes. We know the technology works, but if you're an ops manager or a shop owner tuning in, you're probably way past the basic 101 stuff, right? You don't need another vendor's sales pitch, you need execution. So we're going to dive right in. Today, we're breaking down a really practical guide designed specifically for first-time buyers on how to actually get your first cobot integrated, running, and most importantly, generating a real return on investment.
So, here's our roadmap for today. We're going to start with a quick cobot reality check, then talk about picking your very first application, dig into the hardware and those pesky hidden costs, discuss getting your team on board, and finally, look at choosing your integration partner.
All right, let's kick things off with part 1, the Cobot reality check.
Before you even think about buying a single piece of hardware, you really have to understand that deploying a cobot isn't just one big monolithic task. It's actually two completely distinct capabilities that every single successful project needs. On one side of the coin, you have the logistics, the platform and parts. This means knowing the cobot product line's code, cross-referencing compatibility, handling the bill of materials, and managing those procurement lead times. But on the flip side, you have application and integration. This is the grounded reality of your shop floor. We're talking about walking the floor, designing the specific work cell, building custom fixturing, writing the actual programming, and running a proper risk assessment. You absolutely need both. Now, some companies offer the whole shebang under one roof, while others specialize. But you've got to make sure both of these bases are totally covered from day one.
Moving right along to part 2, picking your first application.
So, assuming you have those deployment capabilities lined up, it's time to select the job. And honestly, the single most common mistake first-time buyers make happens right here. They look out at their floor and try to automate their absolute hardest, most finicky task first. You know the one, the nightmare part with 6 different setups and crazy tight tolerances. Please, do not start there. The smartest approach is applying the 80-20 rule to find your first application. You really want a job that hits 3 specific criteria. First, it has to be repetitive enough to actually matter economically. You need enough annual runtime to justify the setup. Second, it needs to be simple enough to prove fast. Think basic load and unload, pick and place, or simple machine tending. Just give the cobot enough margin to work cleanly. And third, it must be painful enough to care. It has to solve a legitimate business problem, like a massive staffing headache or a major capacity bottleneck. If your team hasn't been actively complaining about doing this job for months, well, it's probably not the right fit for your first cobot.
Which brings us to number 3, hardware and hidden costs.
Okay, so with the perfect, simple, painful application chosen, we step into the hardware selection process. And right away, we run into another classic trap, the danger of over-specifying just because you want to future-proof the deployment. Let's look at the Universal Robots lineup for a second. They're the most widely deployed platform in North America. You can really see how payload capacities scale here. You've got the UR5E handling 5 kilograms, which is fantastic for light assembly. But notice the UR10E right in the middle. With a 12.5 kilogram payload and a 1300 millimeter reach, this is basically the default workhorse for most first-time deployments. It handles the vast majority of machine tending and packaging without even breaking a sweat. Then you have the UR16E, offering more lifting capacity in a really compact space. The key takeaway? Just match the payload to the application you have today. Don't overspend on capability you're not going to use in year 1 just to future-proof it. Honestly, you will learn so much more from a right-sized, easy-to-integrate cobot.
But here is a absolutely critical financial truth that almost always catches operations managers off guard. Ready? The cobot arm itself typically represents only 40 to 60% of your total hardware cost. Let that sink in for a second. The arm is obviously the most visible part of the cell, for sure. But the entire rest of that budget goes to this invisible iceberg of components that actually make the cell function.
So what exactly is the rest of that budget going toward? Well, the first big chunk is EOAT, or end-of-arm tooling. This is the gripper, the vacuum cup, the magnetic tool, or whatever custom end effector is physically touching your part. And honestly, this is often the single most application-specific decision you're going to make in a cobot build. It is quite literally what makes or breaks the reliability of your application.
And those hidden costs, they definitely don't stop at the gripper. Your hidden bill of materials includes safety hardware, like Luz's light cartons or area scanners, especially if your risk assessment points out sharp tooling or pinch points. You also absolutely need operator signaling, like Pat-Light signal towers, so your operators across the floor know instantly if the cell is running, paused, or faulted without having to walk all the way over there. Then you need host machine integration components, like SMC or Wago I/O blocks, just to let the Cobot talk to your CNC machine. And crucially, fixturing. You've got to have custom part holders to get your raw parts into a consistent position so the robot can actually pick them up reliably. There's an old saying in the industry: a modest Cobot with well-designed fixturing will run for years, but an over-engineered Cobot with bad fixturing won't run at all.
All right, let's move to part 4, getting your team on board.
Shifting gears away from the hardware for a minute, we have to talk about the single biggest hidden obstacle in literally any shop. It's not the software. It's not your air supply. It's the human element. I absolutely love this quote. People aren't afraid of robots. They're afraid of uncertainty. It's just such a profound insight. Your people are going to have opinions. Some are going to feel threatened. Some will automatically assume they're being replaced. If you don't address those assumptions right up front, you are going to create this internal resistance that will absolutely kill the project, even if the technology works flawlessly. If they're uncertain, they will subconsciously find reasons for that Cobot to fail.
So, how do we actually solve this? Well, a few weeks before the hardware even hits the loading dock, sit your team down, grab some coffee, and just talk straight with them. First, clarify immediately that nobody is losing their job. Explain that you are adding capacity, not cutting headcount. Tell them this is about running the operation you want, not the one you're currently stuck with. Second, ask the room who wants to be the project champion. Someone's got to learn the programming and run the setups, right? Let them know that taking on this role usually comes with a raise because it's a major skill upgrade. The person who steps up might actually surprise you. Sometimes it's your senior operator who is just totally fed up with repetitive lifting. Other times, it's the youngest team member who's eager to learn something new. Give them that opportunity.
Finally, part 5, choosing your integration partner.
Look, before you sign any checks or call any partners, you need to audit your own shop for legitimate hurdles. Do you have marginal electrical power or a completely maxed out air compressor? You better check those utilities before you spec the cell. Are your raw material parts wildly inconsistent? Because castings that arrive in totally different orientations are going to require much more complex gripper designs. Is there internal mindset resistance from your operations lead? I'm telling you, if they secretly don't believe it will work, it won't. And lastly, what is your preventative maintenance culture actually like? Cobots are super reliable, but grippers wear out and sensors get dirty. Shops that just run their hardware until it literally breaks are going to really struggle with automation.
So the real trick is knowing exactly when to pull the trigger. You are officially ready if you have machines that could produce way more if you just had the labor, if you have highly repeatable jobs, if you're willing to rethink your floor processes, and if you have a realistic budget for that whole hidden bill of materials we talked about earlier. On the flip side, you should probably wait if you are purely running custom one-offs with zero repeatability, if making a capital purchase would risk the business because of tight cash flow, or if your team is just fundamentally opposed to automation. You've got to be really honest with yourself here.
Now, if you are ready, you have to pick the right partner. There are 3 main paths you can take, and frankly, none of them are the only right way. If you already have a trusted integrator who knows your floor inside and out, start there. A distributor like ADI can just supply them the hardware. If you'd rather have a single point of contact to handle both the hardware logistics and the floor deployment, just to keep accountability super tight, go with a generalist team. But if your application is incredibly complex, like fully validated medical device assembly or some really tricky complex welding, you need a specialist integrator. Their deep domain expertise is going to be the difference between a cell that works for a week and one that works for years.
Well, we've covered a lot today. We went through the reality check, uncovered those hidden costs, tackled team psychology, and laid out partner selection. As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with one final thought. Take a walk out onto your shop floor today. Look past all the custom jobs and those nightmare parts we talked about. Look for the simple, painful, highly repetitive bottlenecks. Ask yourself, what machine on your floor is absolutely begging for automation right now? Find that machine, and you've just found your first successful Cobot deployment.